Yeah, 30's cool. 30's great.
Woo!
Uh, we are here on the Let's Build a podcast with my guest, Mark Savant from Mark Savant Media. Yep. And the After Hours Entrepreneur podcast. He's the host of that. He is also an Owwll from the Owwll app. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Owwll app, a little bit about his podcasting, and just everything about Mark. Welcome, Mark. How you doing?
Glad to be here. I'm actually going down to Owwll Studios. As soon as this convo is over, I'm eating an apple and peanut butter. I'm going down to Owwll Studios for their 25-hour live video cast today. So stoked to be a part
Nice.
of that.
Nice. Yeah. I'm doing some of the background stuff on that. I'm like, I'm in the bullpen or whatever. And I told Jason, I'm on call all 25 hours, just whatever. Just let me know what it is, what you need and whatever. So there's very little that I can do from, 1,000 miles away or whatever. But there's some stuff in the background that's, hey, can you take care of this quick for me? Yep. I'm on it, So I'm all about helping out Jason, helping out the Owwll app. And let's talk about that for a minute. Can you tell me a little bit about when you started, what your experiences have been, maybe some pluses and minuses that you've come across or whatever, and how it's working out for you?
Well, so the Owwll app is basically a marketplace that connects professionals together, right? So let's say, for example, you want to connect with a podcast expert. You just type in podcaster, and there'll be experts that you can speak to. Maybe you need an accountant or you need a bookkeeper. You can find people on the app. And generally what you'll do is you'll pay $1 for 15 minutes, or you'll pay a certain fee to speak to that expert and get expert advice. And I think it's a really cool app. It's a really good idea. I've seen Jason from the very beginning putting it together. He's an incredibly hard worker. So mad props to Jason.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And, I've gotten into several really interesting conversations on the app. I think it's a great place to meet new people. And as soon as you log in, you get credits. So you can start calling people right away. And I think he's done a great job with the app.
Yeah, for sure. I think that well, I started on the app. I'm like 6 months in, so I'm still kind of a baby owl, I guess, if you want to call it that. Uh, I met Jason at Podfest, where I saw you zipping from place to place at Podfest, because there's so much going on there and all that. So you get a chance to network with people, and then some people, it's like, oh, I just saw him. There's his back again, all that. So, but I bumped into Jason there, and we talked about the app and stuff like that. And in further conversations, we started working together. I edit the Owwll podcast, and I'm starting to do some of the social stuff. In the beginning, early on, up until just recently, everything was on Facebook Live for the Owwll podcast. So, and the video quality of that is not fantastic to work with, and that's really all they have for video quality. But in some coaching and conversations, we're working on getting some really good crisp video to work with for socials and all that. So I'll be doing that stuff too. So,
listen, I want to give a quick takeaway, because I'm a takeaway kind of guy. I want people, like, if you're going to listen to me for 5 minutes, I want you to walk away with something that's actually going to change your life.
Yeah.
And when I use an app like this, I'm using it really for one reason. I want to make more money.
Sure.
I want to find clients.
Sure.
And there's a couple ways that you can do that with the Owwll app. So here's a couple ways you can make money using the Owwll app. One is you can use it enough so you become an expert, and people will pay you for your time.
Right.
Hey, Mark, I want to learn how to use AI in my podcast process. Hey, Mark, I want to launch my podcast. Right. That's one way. But the other way you can make money using Owwll is the opposite. You're speaking to the expert. Okay. So for example, you're going to find an expert in a certain field. Mm-hmm. You're going to get them on the phone. It could cost as little as $1.
Right.
And say, hey, I noticed you're an attorney. I find that a lot of attorneys struggle with creating video content for social media. Mm-hmm. I actually have a great service that could really provide you with a lot of value, right? I'm not going to go into the 15-minute pitch, but you don't have to be the expert in a topic to sell to the expert in that topic.
Sure.
So, you think about how much money you spend in advertising and getting on the right call with the right people. Well,
100%.
on the Owwll app, you can go directly to the horse's mouth. You already know who the person is, and you can connect with your desired audience immediately for $1 or less.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great angle. I've had a few calls where people have called me about, the thing that they do, and sometimes it's spot on, and sometimes it's like, man, I don't know that I need that, but I might know somebody that does. You know, um, I have a few podcast clients that I work with, and they're in different fields also. So, to bring something from that owl environment through me to the my clients that might need it, you know, that's kind of a thing too. So
The trick here, the trick here, Brian, is selling without selling.
yes,
Because if I'm an expert in the Owwll app and you call me up and you immediately start pitching me on what you do, it's kind of a turnoff. So, and listen, this is
yeah,
the skill. This is sales skill. The
yeah,
skill is listening to the other person tell you about all their problems
hmm,
and then guiding them to the answer, which is the service or product that you offer. Again, this is not something you'll learn
yeah.
overnight, but executed well, Owl's a great place to find new business.
For sure, for sure, and that's actually the sell without selling thing. You're kind of, if you go down the Gary V road, you're selling your trust. You're trying to gain that trust or whatever, and that trust then it can evolve into a sale or a connection or whatever that might be, and like you're saying, the owls. There's so many different levels that Owl is such a great app that and just even getting into just trying it out for the very first time. I have a code, Mark probably has a code, and all that. You get the free $10. You take it for the test drive. If it's for you, great. If not, that's cool too. But no harm, no foul in using the code. My code is Connect. Actually, what is your code, Mark?
I don't even know. I just tell people about it. I don't
That's cool. That's cool.
know.
That's cool. Well, use mine. It's Connect. It's super easy. You can download it on Android and iOS and all that. Yeah. So that works. Uh, okay. Let's talk about podcasting.
I know about podcasting. I can do
Yes, you
that.
do. Yes, you do. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to, like, this is a multifaceted thing because you hit a few marks that I want, my audience to learn about, and talking about all and all that stuff too. Podcasting. Uh let's start in the beginning. You know, in conversations that you and I have had, we kind of come from similar areas where we're doing one thing, grown to a place where you don't much care for it anymore, and that's putting it politely, and then trying to evolve into something else. So tell me a little bit about your journey from that one thing to where the journey through the transition and then where you are now.
Sure. So listen, I don't want to tell everyone a boring story about me that you're not going to care about, but basically I was in insurance for about a decade, hated it, got into podcasting. But here's the moral of the story.
Hmm.
The moral of the story is that we're going through a time of massive disruption.
Hmm.
Every single level, every single person, every single industry is completely being flipped on its head right now.
Hmm.
And what that means for you as a listener, as a human being in this world, is you need to keep up with the disruption.
Hmm.
The job that you have right now is probably not going to be around in 5 years. So how are you going to approach that? How do
Right.
you stay relevant? And for me, podcasting is one of the best ways to stay relevant.
Sure.
And this is why. Because if you're the one who's fighting the tidal wave, trying to push back that change that's coming, it's not going to work. You're going to get overwhelmed by the technology and the new systems, right? But if you embrace it and you're vocal about it and you're loud about the changes that are happening,
Mhm.
well, now you become a thought leader. You become
Sure.
a thought leader in something that you're good at, in something that you're embracing. And that's where podcasting is important, because now you're being public, you're being loud about the changes that are impacting you, your life, and your industry, and people start to take notice. right? And so
Right.
I think that's why podcasting, to me, I'm kind of fortunate that I fell into podcasting, because it's enabled me to um, position myself as someone who's embracing all this technology and this
Sure.
AI, and that I think is the reason why podcasting is something that's really important right now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, then so from the perspective, so my podcast is basically about, and I understand there's 100,000 podcasts about podcasting, right? My little niche in that is that, uh, you know, to be honest, I'm very budget minded. To be blunt, I'm cheap. You know, but but there's ways to achieve things being in a budget. I've never really wanted to. I'm the family provider in essence, but I've never really wanted to use the family's money to fund what I'm doing, on the side, right? So in finding alternate ways of doing things, or working my way through a problem in a creative way or whatever. I'm really about that. When you first started, like your very first, like, I'm going to do this. Um, what were Walk me through. This is my idea, and this is my first episode. You know what I mean? How did that work for you? Because my listeners going through a lot of that. You know, they're trying to figure out how they want to do it, where they can do it, what equipment they might need, and all that. Can you kind of walk me through a little bit of that?
Sure. Well, being cheap is not a bad thing. It's not a good thing, because
Right,
it takes money to create impact. You need income for impact.
right,
The flip side, though, is you don't need like a $5,000 website to start a business. You don't need a $5,000 microphone setup, to start a
right,
podcast. So,
right.
I'm with you. You want to start lean, and I think that's the way that I look at podcasting. Is it might not be for you.
Mm-hmm.
So do you really want to spend thousands of dollars, and it turns out by episode 7 you're like, oh, this is a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
So to answer your question, I think for a podcast to work, for it to give you, because the way that I see podcasting is it's a means of attaining thought leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for you to attain that level of thought leadership, you cannot just agree with the status quo.
Okay.
Thought leaders are leaders, meaning they're leading the way. Thought leaders are not followers. And that's a problem, I think, that a lot of podcasters and a lot of people in general fall into, is that you're just agreeing with everything that everyone's saying.
Sure.
So if you want to have a successful podcast, if you want to achieve thought leadership, you cannot agree with everything. You need to find and I'm not just saying controversial, don't be controversial, just be controversial. What I'm
Right.
saying is there are probably preconceived notions in your industry right now that you think are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There are probably people that you love that you disagree with.
Sure.
Be the
Talk
what
about it. Yeah.
You got to talk about it. You need to
Yeah.
be able to disagree with people, and you need to be able to flip your industry on its head, because that is going to happen, and you can either be on top of that or you can be on the bottom. So when you're thinking about your podcast, just think about, what's my general topic? What are the preconceived notions, and why are they wrong? And then talk about that.
Sure. Sure. I'm doing a series, or my very first episode actually drops on Monday. It's a 8-part series about, like super breaking down step 1, step 2, step 3, whatever. Um, I've been in the building trades for 30 years, so I know that when I get to a job, 10 minutes later, I'm not going to be done with the job. There's this step, there's this step, there's this step, right? And that's kind of the mindset that I'm in with, you know, the things that I'm doing, and really how to get into this field, this industry, this medium, basically. Um, so hell, I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, listen, if you're getting started in the industry, you have to understand that you're going to suck at first, right? That's
Oh,
part of it.
yeah.
Like, the worst thing that you can do if you get into an industry is 1 year from now, look back and say, wow, I was so great. That's not
Oh,
what happened. In 1 year, like when I look at the stuff they made a year ago, I'm like, I was terrible.
sure,
Gosh, and
sure,
if you're not saying that, then you're probably not growing. And if you're not growing, you might as well find something else to be doing, is the way
for
I
sure,
see it.
for sure.
But starting sloppy, getting into it, not falling prey to perfection paralysis is really important. And listen, the podcast industry is, I don't want to use the word mature because there's still a lot of room for growth,
Oh, for sure.
but you're not going to have success attracting clients. You're not going to have success attracting listeners if you're just doing the same thing that other people have done.
Right.
It's looking at what other people have done and finding the right models to that, but then making it interesting. And I'll give you a perfect example of this.
Okay.
So growing up, my family went to church all the time. We were in
Mhm.
church Wednesdays, Sunday mornings for, there were 3 different sessions on Sunday. We spent a lot of time in church.
Sure.
And yeah, frankly, it was boring. I
Okay.
didn't like it. It was
Sure.
boring. And I kind of burned out on it. Now, there are some tried and true concepts from the Bible. There's a reason why the Bible's the most sold book of all time. It's been around
Yep.
for 2,000 years, right?
Yep.
It's because there's some good concepts in there.
Sure.
But at least for me, the packaging and the messaging was boring.
Hmm.
So the churches that are doing well now are churches that are following those tried and true concepts, but they're putting it in a way that's exciting, that's
Right.
interesting. There's lights, there's cameras everywhere,
Sure. Sure.
there's loud music. They're bringing in gospel art. Those are the churches that are winning and are growing. So
Hmm.
just again, you can apply this to every business. What are the tried and
Yep.
true concepts that have worked? And then how can I make it interesting? How can I package it in a way that people are interested in?
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and I mean, to take a step down, that world a little bit, the church world, if you look at how Martin Luther did things with bringing bar tunes, from the melodies from the pubs into hymns.
Sure.
I mean, if you want to go way back, and that's how some of that kind of started. What I was getting to earlier is my very first episode talks about your why, you know, and you hear about that from a lot of people, find your why, find your why, find your why. And I feel that it's a real important foundation block, right? Because if you're not really sure why you're doing something, how do you gauge each step after that? What do you want to achieve? Who do you want to talk to? All that stuff. Your why. What is your feeling on all of this? What is your why talk?
Yeah. Well, so to me, the why is important because it helps you create a clear vision. You want a
Mhm,
vision of where is this thing actually going? Do I want to be
mhm.
Rogan, or do I want to have a production agency, or do I want to be a podcast booking? Like, where is this thing going? What's your
Sure,
vision?
sure.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was in the gym day in, day out, putting in the reps, suffering, bleeding, missing out on dates, waking up at 3 a.m., lifting weights over and over, it's because he had a vision of himself standing on stage
Mhm,
as Mr. Olympia with people all around him cheering, Arnold, Arnold, Arnold. He had a vision of where he wanted to go.
sure.
And because of that vision, he was able to kill that 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 voice in your head that says just sleep in, or
Mhm.
that voice that says you can just watch the Netflix, because he had that vision. And I think that your why is directly correlated to that vision, because there's going to be days that you just don't feel like doing what you need to do.
Mhm.
But if you can keep that vision of where you want to go, it creates clear steps in front of you.
Sure, sure. One of my clients is Desmond Clark from former Chicago Bears. He's a tight end, Super Bowl team, and all that, right? And I love Des. He's so great to work with. So, So just easygoing. He's coachable and he's also a coach. It goes both ways, and I love that. And in editing all of his stuff, like he throws a lot of stuff to me on a weekly basis, and his message over and over and over. His podcast is very industry specific, right? He has a why. He absolutely has a why. But his overall, like his theme or his thesis statement, or whatever you want to call it, is he can tell you how to achieve greatness. Okay, he says that you do the mundane things every day over a period of time, and that and then and that gets you to where you need to be as far as greatness. Like, in a sports context, say you're a hockey player, you're not great at crossovers, right? You get up and you practice those crossovers every day, and you get better and you get better and you get better, and then you take the next step and you get better and you better. And as far as podcasting goes, you have your why, you've got your setup, you're recording, right? And the first one doesn't go all that great. Okay. Don't get discouraged about it, right? What could make one part of that better? Don't you don't have to tackle the whole thing, right? Like, how could I have done that one thing better? And then just practice and practice and practice that, and at some point then it just becomes natural. I'm early on actually in just podcasting on this side of the mic. I'm usually on the other side of the mic, and I've done that for several years now. I've been on the other side of the mic, right? So for me, I'm taking that journey right along with my listener, right? Because yes, I have some equipment and all that, whatever, but sitting and talking and doing the interviews and stuff, that's taking me a little bit of time to get comfortable with. It's easier when I'm comfortable with the person. Like you and I have talked, a few times now, and I'm comfortable talking to you, but somebody new that I've never met, a little bit intimidating maybe to me, and probably to my listener also. Um, as far as that goes, well, let's just talk about interviews. As far as that goes, how were your first interviews versus how you're doing it now? Like, obviously it's fluid. I listen to your podcast all the time. It's fluid. It's natural. You're comfortable. Yeah. So you nail it. But was it like that to start with, like your very first couple interviews that you did?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable meeting new people. That's, again, you want to find something that you're going to have success with. You need to have talent. You need to enjoy it, and there needs to be a market demand for it. And I have all three. So yes, I do still get nervous. Sometimes I have big guests on this show. Like I had James Altucher on the show. I was nervous about that. Pat Flynn joined the show a couple times. I was
Right.
nervous about that. I'm bringing on the executive producer of The Sound of Freedom on the show here pretty soon, so I'm a little nervous about that. So that does happen, but I'll give you one quick interview tip. All right, one quick. Again, this is something you can take to the bank.
Actionable.
I'm a practical guy. Anytime you listen to me, you're going to walk away with something.
Sure.
One of the main values that you get from a podcast is the clips that come after the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you're asking a guest a question, you got to keep that in mind. So
Sure.
one of the mistakes that I made, and is really common in new podcasters, is they kind of like ask a really long question, right? It might be 30 seconds, a minute. It could be even longer. You ask this really long question and then you pass the mic over.
Sure.
But when you ask the question, you can still do that. I still kind of feel around my question.
Mm-hmm.
But before I ask the question, I reframe it into something that's really bite-sized.
Okay.
So as I'm feeling out my question, and as soon as I have the question in my mind, I'll ask it again, but I'll ask it in a way that only takes 3 seconds, and then I send it over to my guest. That way, I know that I can take that and it's going to be really clippable, because on social media, on a YouTube short, you
Mm.
only have like 2 seconds or 3 seconds to wrap someone in.
Yep.
If
Yeah.
they jump in that clip and you're like stumbling and bumbling and fumbling, to quote Boomer Esiason, if you're
Yeah.
stumbling, bumbling, and fumbling to try to find that question,
Yeah.
the clip is gonna suck.
Yep.
But if you can ask a really quick and concise question and then toss the mic over, it's going to make for a much better clip. So that's a quick interview tip for all
For
you
sure.
podcasters out there.
For sure. Yeah, and from a clip editor's standpoint, I will take a question and really bring it down to, like you said, something real short, bite size, because you want to get onto that next part of whatever it is, right? You're introducing the clip, you're getting the hook, but you need to quickly get into that thing, that valuable thing that guest has conveyed, as far as what the response is and all that.
Exactly. And
And
as an editor, the better your input, the better your output.
right.
So, and again, is something we all need to be thinking about as the actual host of a show. I want to give my editor, or I want to give my future self, the best quality to work off of.
Right. Sure. Yep. I interviewed Eric Allen last night, and oh my gosh, you hit record and hope for the best, and he does. He just delivers. It just keeps coming and keeps coming, and I couldn't get a word in edgewise, but that's just who he is. But he's excited, and I love his excitement. But editing down his stuff, because I do stuff for him also, editing his stuff down, there's enough there where there's plenty to work with, so just a
I
little.
also think when it comes to clips, so just as a side note, by the way,
Mhm.
for anyone that's getting new into podcasting, think about how long your episodes are and cut them in half. That's just another quick piece of
Yeah.
advice I'd give, because most podcasts are just too long.
Yep.
But when you think about the clips that you're creating, your clips don't all need to be 45-second clips. Some of the best, and you're seeing this a lot in the industry right now, some of the biggest shows are taking 10-minute clips,
Mm-hmm.
20-minute clips from a show, more for the longer form shows.
Sure.
And those can perform really well also. And they can send traffic, especially if you're on YouTube. Try 8-minute clips.
Yeah. And that's a Rogan thing, actually, isn't it? He started that 3 to 5 minute thing, where it's,
It could be, but all the big podcasts are doing it now. And
yeah.
there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're getting kind of close to where we're wrapping up here. Where you're the host of the After Hours podcast. Wonderful podcast. If you are starting a podcast, if you're an entrepreneur, for sure listen to Mark. You're on the socials, you're on all that stuff, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Find Mark there, and find him on Owwll. And he's on sometimes, I'm on sometimes, and you can request people sometimes to call if you're new on the Owwll app and you see somebody interesting. You can hit that request, and sometimes people see it, sometimes they won't. And that's
listen, the best way to disrupt your life, your industry, and be successful is to go to marksavantmedia.com.
yeah.
Go to marksavantmedia.com.
Yep.
And you're going to get my concise resources to make sure that you're going to survive this disruption that's happening already. That's at marksavantmedia.com.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks for that. Thank you so much for your time today. And it's great to again talk one-on-one. It's always a good time. I get it's Mark Savant overload with the information. So I'll have to decompress after this a little bit and move on to the next thing. And I don't know if you're going to be on the 25-hour things this afternoon, I think, isn't it?
As soon as we hang up, I'm putting the key in the car and we are rolling, baby. Jason Helen coming for you. Oh, and Tarzan himself, the other Jason, going to be there. So it's going to be dope.
Nice. Great. Well, again, thanks so much for being on the podcast, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
See ya.